Welcome back, everyone. You are watching a News 12 Vote 2013 debate in the race for Rockland County Executive. I'm Tim Cassidy. We want to get right now to another round of questions, starting with Ms. Janine Rose. Ms. Rose, your question will be for David Freed.
Hi. Thank you, Tim. Mr. Freed, earlier this year, the mayor and deputy mayor of Spring Valley, along with a GOP party leader who worked for Clarkstown, and several others were all indicted by the U.S. attorney and charged in an elaborate scheme to fix, of all things, the race for New York City mayor. We've subsequently learned that the construction of the minor league baseball stadium in Ramapo and officials there may also be the subject of a federal probe. Certainly the majority of public servants are honest and hardworking, but if elected, how do you clean up the bad politics and prevent future corruption?
Absolutely. And, you know, the reality is that people don't trust us because you see all of these examples, horrible examples of people abusing the public trust. And I am relatively certain that my opponent and I would agree. I think my opponent's an honorable man, you know, but there are certainly people out there that are that get into this field to serve, and there are certainly people that get into this field to serve themselves. And I think that, especially having served as a judge, the independence of the judiciary, the high ethical standards of the judiciary, have always focused me on service first and adherence to the ethical standards that people would expect of us. It's one of the reasons that I am a huge supporter of campaign finance reform, is the fact that there is too much that can go wrong. And that's why it's very important that we have aggressive rules. But I want accountability. I am very proud of our district attorney, Tom Zugabe, the role that he's playing now in the Cuomo administration, looking at how to handle these issues from a more global perspective. And the reality is that county government has to support and invest in issues, or in resources rather, with the DA's office, with the sheriff's office, because people need to know that the tools are there to monitor and to enforce. And penalties should be absolutely severe. I'm very happy to see that the federal government is also looking at the pensions in the situation for those people that are presently accused.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. Mr. Day, your response, a minute and a half on cleaning up bad politics.
Thank you, Tim. I think you and the public have a right to expect a minimum from your elected officials. Honesty, integrity, and it's sad that a few do not want to even achieve that very low bar in their life. Instead of representing you, they would rather treat their time as their own piggy bank filler. I will tell you straight out, I have spent a lifetime in law enforcement fighting corruption and crime. I will not countenance, nor accept, nor let stand any corruption in government. I will help and do whatever needs to be done to assist in chasing it down and stopping it. It is a scar upon our county. Every time something like this happens, it makes us look terrible as Rockland County. And that's what we have to understand. We have to be strong in that area. I will support any effort, whether it be the FBI, whether it be our own district attorney, to combat corruption as it stands. And I will also note that as a legislator, I did introduce two pieces of legislation, one to support the effort to amend the state constitution to take away all benefits from any elected official who is convicted of a felony, a crime against public administration. Concurrently, on the chance that we can do this locally, I introduced a local law, legislation for a local law, that will accomplish the same thing. Any elected official who is convicted of a crime against public administration while in office will lose all benefits. We need that type of strong approach in order to stop this. For the few who wish to get rich off of you, they better be fearing me when I become county executive next year, because I will not stand for it.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Ms. Rose, you have a follow-up question now for Mr. Freed.
Yeah, Mr. Freed, the development project in Spring Valley specifically was for the basis for the alleged corruption there. The ballpark, another major municipal development. If you're elected, since these are municipal projects, happening in various municipalities, should there be more oversight on the county's part regarding a major development project like this, and where was the oversight before?
Right. Absolutely. And I think that whether it's through economic development tools that we have, there need to be safeguards In terms of the interrelationship between different levels of government, there have to be mechanisms to identify and investigate. I think that, as you mentioned, these are municipal projects, but that does not mean that the county can just wash its hands and the county executive doesn't have a role. There's a difference between governing the county government and being a central figure that unites all of Rockland County, and someone that can be looked to and counted on to stand up and deal with issues even at the municipal level. I completely agree with what you're saying there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Freed. Our next question comes from Steve Posel from WRCR 1300 AM Radio Rockland, and your question will be for Mr. Ed Day.
I just want to expand on something Ms. Rose was talking about a little earlier. You know, we have an ever-increasing divide in Rockland County, culturally and socially, between the ultra-religious Orthodox community and the general citizenry at large. There's anger, there's resentment, there's distrust, there's general misunderstanding. Now, you know, both of you guys listen to this show on a fairly regular basis. You hear these people calling. You hear them talking about this, and you can hear the anger just welling up and it becoming more and more polarized. You can't run a society like this. I'm sure everybody will agree with that. And I know neither of you are sociologists. I know it's not within the purview of government to do anything. But you know what? Somebody has got to, and I'm sure that you've thought about this. Do you have any ideas on how to promote honest and open dialogue between these communities?
Yes, thanks, Steve. No, I have heard a lot of this on the radio and also in blogs. There's way too much hate out there. There really is. What has to happen from a leader's perspective is very simple. Outreach and accountability and approachability. These are things that are critical for anybody who's looking to lead a county, particularly when we have a lot of clear issues where folks just are not getting along. That said, however, I believe very strongly in taking a fair and balanced approach. Equal opportunity for all, special preference for none. That has to be a standard in government. And as long as everybody understands that, I believe a lot of folks who are having their issues, internal or not, will start understanding that the way things are done should be done that way. We should have an ability, very simply, to govern in that way. We should handle, I see community grants being used. They're not being used in a fair and balanced manner. That's wrong, and that just feeds that whole suspicious aspect of what other people are doing. But we have to have, I intend to engage in an outreach immediately upon going into office to speak to the various communities to ensure that there's an understanding of what my role as county executive is, and more to the point, the role of county government in ensuring that there is a fair and balanced approach of everybody in our county.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Mr. Freed, your response on the culture clash in Rockland.
Right. Well, you know, I'll tell you that it's so obvious, whether you're listening on WRCR, watching News 12, or you know, reading the blogs. I mean, there's always such intense passion on this issue. And the fact that we have sides in our community is a terrible thing. You know, you look at, there's one side and another side. I mean, that's just horrible. There are divisions, and I think that very often it's an issue that people try to avoid talking about. But the reality is it has to be talked about, and I think that the county executive must be engaged in this issue of bringing all parties together to talk. You know, look at issues like overdevelopment. Look at what's the disaster that's going on in the East Ramapo Central School District. You know, you can't have favorites. I believe that as government leaders, we have to set an example and improve the process so that there's balance. I think that is very important. The administration has to be engaged. It's the only way to start the process of fixing this. And it can't be avoided. I mean, you know, the development is rampant. There is division on all sorts of issues, as I said it before, in public education. But I want to see the county executive have a tool to do something about it, not just talk about it. I'd like to see a stronger investment in our Human Rights Commission as an example, providing tools to center the conversation and also to deal with clashes when they arise.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. Mr. Posel, you will have a follow-up question for Mr. Ed Day.
What about, you know, for example, how the county appointed a committee, an LDC, I guess was what we call it, to dispose of the hospital? What about, upon taking office, a committee to report back to you to get the two communities together, get representatives, kind of an ad hoc committee, and report to me on specifics. You know, we're talking in generalities here. I want to hear some specifics. Do you have anything?
Yeah, absolutely. The specifics will be, I'm not going to let a committee do this, I'll do it. I will go out there and meet with people. People need to see their leaders. I understand one thing from having command, that when you are a leader, you should be seen, you should be providing direction, you should be providing, having accountability, giving leadership and organization, and you have to be out there doing this. I don't see a committee doing the job. We have some divides here. East Ramapo School District, the children there are suffering. Time is no longer an option. We cannot allow a public school system to go under. Children who do not get educated are either going to go to jail or they're going to have no future. It's unacceptable. Patrick Farm, I was the only county executive candidate to physically go to the department, the DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation hearings, and speak against the Patrick Farm development. Again, I will accept nothing but fair yet balanced approach to governance, and with the same rules for all.
Thank you, Mr. Day. We now want to go to our third panelist. Ed Race will have a question for David Freed.
Mr. Freed, in Rockland County, economic development, the attraction, retention, expansion of business, and the creation of jobs is contracted out to Rockland Economic Development Corporation. In Westchester County, the economic development efforts are part of the county executive's responsibilities. Do you plan any changes in the way economic development is handled in Rockland County if you are elected county executive?
Can I have 2 hours to answer that question? The county executive is the chief economic development officer. In the past several years, we have not seen leadership on the issue of economic development. That is why Rockland County is unaffordable. It's unaffordable because we keep reaching into families' pockets to deal with our financial situation, as opposed to bringing in business and creating employment opportunities and bringing ratables that can help sustain government. I believe that the county executive must be engaged. Mr. Day has talked about creating a position in his office to have someone deal with this. I want to deal with it directly. I believe that the tools are there. You have the Rockland Economic Development Corporation, you have the Industrial Development Agency, you have the Workforce Investment Board, you have the Small Business Development Center over at Rockland Community College. You get all these different pieces. I want to meet with them regularly as a board of economic advisors. Myself, engaged leadership to make sure that it's working. And I want to provide incentives to bring businesses here. But I want to hold them accountable. And I want them to create jobs. And I want those jobs to go to people that live in this county. I also want to create a new element in a college president's council. I believe that what we should be doing is matching degree programs with prospective businesses so we can make a match so that people graduate college and have a job ready for them. The biggest problem that this county has is that people that I grew up with don't live here anymore. They don't have the ability to afford a home, get a job, and help to refuel the tax base.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. Mr. Day, your response on economic development.
Thank you very much, Ed. As a matter of fact, you just looked at number 5 on my plan of economic development. I will absolutely re-examine that relationship. It's important to take a look at that. I'm going to, again, we don't agree on this, but at no additional cost, because there will be a number of patronage jobs lost. I'm going to have an economic growth development coordinator, which has been strongly requested by those who have the ability to bring millions of dollars of grant money under the new paradigms being offered for grants by the governor. So that is part of it. A Council for Economic Growth, number 9 on my plan, something that's critical to have done, and also similar to what Mr. Freed just said, a critical skills retention program in RCC and BOCES to rapidly identify changing needs in education, again, to keep young people here. This plan has been endorsed from big business to our retail, our Chamber of Commerce, and our unions, because they understand we need to deal with issues such as market, an interface to the various stakeholders, regulations. We have to provide incentives as time. Young people in education is critical. And consumer behavior. The fact that people go to Jersey to buy things, they're not going to Jersey because it's Jersey. They're going there because they're getting chased out of New York State in order to buy something that's cheaper. There needs to have governments understand something. Market behavior, consumer behavior is not a governmental issue. It's a real economic issue. It has to be approached and attacked in that manner, because if you don't do that, it's just going to get worse.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Mr. Arrace, you have a follow-up question now for David Freed only.
David, Freed, do you think the type of jobs and what they pay that are being created by the current economic development efforts justify the tax breaks that the county IDA has given, such as property taxes, mortgage recording taxes, and sales tax exemption?
Well, in some instances, and in some instances not. I think that what we have to really do is look very closely at the incentives that are offered. There's a good justification for providing a business an incentive to relocate to Rockland County. As you know, there are tremendous disadvantages that Rockland County has, mostly based upon geography. Our lack of access to New York City. Orange County has an airport. New Jersey offers greater state incentives. So we've been kind of left out in Rockland. And I think that one of the things we have to do is look at the IDA. We have to look comprehensively, and I think the way that you do that is to be engaged in the process and look to see, what benefits can be offered that are attractive and helpful. But I want to see the job creation element enforced. And if, in fact, a business does not live up to the standards that are set, I think that the people deserve to have those incentives paid back.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. Now we want to go back to you, the local voter. This time, the concern is about elder care. Take a listen.
My name is Christine, and I am from Suffern. I have a question. The question is, what are we doing with the nursing homes? We have many, many elderly residents in the county that I really think need a little assistance.
Okay, good question, Mr. Day. We're going to give you a minute to respond to that.
Thank you, Tim. I'm sorry I didn't catch the lady's name, but thank you for the question. We are in a bit of a quandary right now because the facility, the nursing home, has been placed under a limited development corporation. That was a vote by the legislature. To be honest, I did not support it. I have been critical of the hospital and the nursing home for many, many years. I called for the resignation of the commissioner because I felt the management of the facility was really not up to par. But the decision was made. We're going forward. I know Mr. Freed and I have spoken about this, that we are going to be in somewhat of uncharted waters here. The challenge we're going to have is that the employees who give good care, very good care to the people who are there, are not really highly motivated to work with a new manager, a new administration, because they realize they're not too distant future. Their jobs will be removed from county government. They'll be told to leave and come back at a lower rate of pay and reduce benefits. So the motivation is going to be minimal, I believe. So the challenge here is going to be to find a way, as the manager, to get something done. And here's where I believe I have the tools and the skills to make the most of that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Mr. Freed, your take on elder care from our voter, Christine.
Well, as a senior citizen in training myself, there is a very critical importance to look at this issue. I meet people all across Rockland County that are concerned about their loved ones that have been at Summit Park, for example, and they're worried, they're scared about how they're going to be able to care for their loved ones. When you consider the cost of living in Rockland County and add on the additional costs of elder care, I mean, it's a critical emergency for many families. But I'll tell you what I did. A couple of months ago, I got in my car and I drove up to Ulster County, and I met with County Executive Mike Hine. The reason that I went there is because County Executive Hine was dealing with a very similar situation when he first took office as County Executive in Ulster. They had gone through the process. I think very often Rockland County is detached. We are an island. There are issues similar to the ones that we face all across the state of New York. There are counties where hospitals are transferred or closed or sold. We have to look at the best practices and bring them here.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. We want to get right now to our third round of questions from our media panel. The first this time will come from News 12's Janine Rose. Ms. Rose, your question will be directed to Ed Day.
Thanks again, Tim. All right, Mr. Day, in response to Steve Purcell's earlier question this evening about the bond request to the state to try to offset Rockland's deficit, you mentioned Governor Cuomo leaving Rockland, quote, twisting in the wind, not providing any answers or direction. Do you think party politics might be at play here? Could the governor be waiting perhaps to see if a Democratic administration takes over in January?
I have been told that that is a dynamic. Do I have personal knowledge of that? Absolutely not. I just find it frustrating as a representative of government, as a citizen, that this is something that was asked for by the state. Remember something, and it's something that members of the legislature did not want to see, and I advocated for, and we got into the bill. What we do have in that bill is oversight. The state controller is going to have to provide oversight for the budget as it is presented. That's a positive thing, because this is the same fight I've been fighting as a legislator. So I look forward to that. So it would seem to me, when the legislation went through locally, and that went into play and became part of the law, and this is something our state representatives spoke to. They said, we got to have that in order for the governor to sign it. To see this languish month after month after month, I think is wrong. And it's frankly not typical of the governor that I'm aware of. He seems to be very forward in issues. So his motivation, I'll leave to pundits. I don't know. But I will tell you, it creates an issue here in Rockland in order to try to move forward and get us out of this mess. And it is problematic, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Mr. Freed, your take on the governor and possibilities of why he may be waiting to make a decision on the budget and the deficit fund.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that all of us would agree that this governor is one that is engaged and is active. I mean, look how he expedited the Tappan Zee Bridge project and so many other things that affect Rockland County. I do not believe that it's politically motivated. I think that what the governor is doing, and just my analysis, is he's waiting to see some action from the Rockland County legislature and the Rockland County executive. You know, as I had mentioned before, you know, you can't take a $96 million loan to fix your deficit and then expect the deficit to just disappear and not recreate itself unless you restructure the government. As I said before, I think that the governor is counting on, and rightfully so, the elected officials of Rockland County government, Democrat, Republican, executive, legislature, to do their jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. Ms. Rose, you now have a follow-up question, this time for Ed Day only.
So, Mr. Day, if what Mr. Freed is saying that the governor is waiting to see action, you also spoke about literally restructuring the government if you take office to prevent this deficit from increasing, if not happening again. So how do you restructure, and do you think the governor would respect that if he saw some movement?
Oh, absolutely. You know, again, as far as what the governor's looking for, again, I can't get inside of his head, but regardless of what happens, we have to take action. We're going to have to deal. If it is not approved, we have a cash flow crunch that will continue. That will make things a little more difficult. What I will do on day one is treat this as it is. It is a financial crisis. The deficit went from $96 to $127 million in 1 year. And we're being told it's getting better. The administration's saying it's getting better. That's ridiculous. It's not getting better. We need to deal with this as a crisis. Day one in office, we will complete review of all jobs. Day one in office, all commissioners and high-ranking people in government will be asked for their resignation. They will stay on based upon their abilities, not upon who they know. Patronage jobs will be cut. We will do a zero-based budget initiative day one and move it forward so my first budget will be clean and have complete integrity. We will look at the potential of one-shots in order to deal with the deficit and keep it focused on the deficit, not what happens now with the leadership of our legislature. What happens now is that you get some money, it goes into the operations for that current year. That's unacceptable. We have to have that look at other areas where we can end up getting one-shots that go specifically and narrowly to relieving the deficit and getting this county healthy again financially.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Our next question will go back to Mr. Steve Posel from WRCR 1300 AM Radio Rockland. Your question, Mr. Posel, will be for David Freed.
Thanks. The current county executive is just completing 20 years of service, except he wouldn't be if he had his druthers. Well, he ran against Carlucci for state senate, right? I think he vied for lieutenant governor. I think maybe even comptroller. Am I missing one? President of Rockland Committee? You know what? I like the guy. I'm not putting him down at all. I like Scott a great deal. But unfortunately, the stepping stone scenario in the American political system is all too common. And my belief is people voted for you, man. Serve 4 years, you know? So my question to you is simply, it's cut and dry, two parts. A, if the opportunity became available for you to aspire to a higher political position while you were in office, would you take it? And two, if you chose to take it, would you resign your county executive position or keep it in the event that your plans didn't work out? You had something to fall back on.
Wow. Okay. Well, I am running for county executive to be county executive. And quite frankly, with the disaster that exists in Rockland County government right now, I don't think there's going to be a lot of time to think about running for some different office. I realize what I'm signing up for. This is not going to be an easy job, but I can't wait to get started because this can be fixed, and I can't wait to fix it. You fix it through partnership. You fix it through aggressive leadership and creativity. But Steve, I plan on being here and doing the work that needs to be done. You know, it is just very often, you know, people think about, well, what comes next in their careers? The reality is, I've always believed, do your job, do it well, and the people will decide in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. Mr. Day, any possibility of running for higher political office if you become county executive?
Well, don't laugh. I'm not that old. First of all, I admire the oratorical skills of my opponent. He speaks very well. He is an attorney. I didn't hear an answer to the question, but that's besides the point. But anyway, as far as running for higher office, in direct response to your question, Steve, absolutely not. I am doing this for a very defined reason. I want to fix this. I want to use the skills I've developed over the years to fix the problem. That is my focus. My focus is defined by not taking a pension in the system. I declined that when I became a legislator. My focus is term limits. My focus is committing myself to this job specifically and narrowly. And if for some reason you catch me in a lie, which you're not going to, let me make something very clear. No, I'm not. I'm only kidding around. I am absolutely going to do this job for a term. If the people of this county like what I'm doing, they'll re-elect me for a second term, and that will be it. I will tell you something else. If something should happen, anything should happen, I have something to fall back on, a job. I'm a security consultant in the city. I have skills. I have work in the private sector. That's my job. Government service is a passion for me. It will continue to be a passion, whether it's full-time or part-time.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Mr. Posel, you can now pose a follow-up question to Mr. David Freed only.
Well, I mean, that was the essence of my question. I think it was, I thought you answered it.
I thought I answered it too.
So we'll have either of you for at least 4 years, I guess. I don't really have a follow-up for that.
Gotcha, okay. All right, we're going to move on then. We're going to go to Mr. Ed Arrace from HB Biz. He's got a question ready for Mr. Ed Day.
According to Rockland Tomorrow, the county's comprehensive plan, which was adopted March 2011, the #1 economic development recommendation was to prepare a comprehensive economic development plan. Do you know if this was done? And if not, why not?
Do I know it was done? I have not seen a comprehensive economic development plan brought to the legislature. If you're going to ask a question, why not? Often in government, and this is again a frustration, and I'll give you an example. I had spoken to the county executive a number of times about our contract agencies. This goes back to 2007. Can't we have some more order to how we convey funding to the necessary things contract agencies do for us? They're there to augment the good intentions of government and do so in a better manner than we can in government. And it's really a good model. But after saying this a number of times, I finally said, you know something, I'm going to formally introduce this, and I did in January 2010. What happened in April 2010, the county executive included that, magically, in his own State of the County plan. Okay, doesn't matter who gets credit for it as long as it gets done. There was a committee formed. Do you know how many times that committee has met? Not one time. It's gone nowhere. This is exactly the kind of thing that I will not accept. Anybody who knows me knows I have high energy, I have dedication, I do not believe in letting things just drop off to the wayside. I like going after things and getting things done. The reality is, on January 1st, if there's no plan, there will be one put together in a collective, collaborative way with business leaders, our unions, our towns, villages, and we'll have a focused effort on economic development, whether or not it's required by any document or not.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Mr. Freed, your take on a comprehensive economic plan.
Mm-hmm. Well, to the best of my knowledge, it hasn't been done, to answer your question. And I think the reason it hasn't been done is because there has been no leadership on economic development at all. What we have seen in Rockland County is the towns. The towns have been forced to fend for themselves in terms of bringing in economic development. And when you have each town moving in a different direction, left to deal with it on their own because there's no leadership in county government, the reality is that there isn't a plan. It's put together in different ways depending upon which part of the county you're in. You know, look at the shops at Nanuet. new complex. Used to be the Nanuet Mall. I call it the new old mall because it was formerly the Nanuet Mall, and then it failed with the Palisades Mall coming in, and now we have the shops at Nanuet. County government didn't do that. The Clarkstown Town Board did that. So it's very important to bring the leadership that you see in Clarkstown to county government. Same thing, look at the Bloomberg Data Center in Orangetown. These are things that local municipalities are doing. There is no comprehensive plan for economic development, and my administration will prioritize it.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. Mr. Arrace, you're going to have a follow-up question this time for Ed Day.
You both mentioned forming Council of Economic Advisors or something like that. Is this something that would be a priority with you, where you would make it up of local business and bankers in the community and meet with on a monthly basis?
Yes.
Or is it something on a quarterly basis? How important is this to you?
I got the...
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Ed. It is very important. It's part of my plan. This is why I did this. Again, it's critical for the county executive to be out in front on these issues. And meeting with our other levels of government is a critical piece, along with our business leaders, our unions, and our retail folks. A slight pivot from what Mr. Freed said. We're not in great disagreement here, but the frustration here is it's not just that county government is not leading, because the executive branch is not leading, but the reality also is that there's a new paradigm, which I mentioned earlier, about how we can obtain financing and economic awards. The Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council, which is established by Governor Cuomo, allows for applications to come forward and for funding to be given for appropriate grants that you can demonstrate have a regional impact and are things that will apply to the application. One of the problems we have, which is brought forth by Al Samuels of the Rockland Business Association, Dr. Cliff Wood of RCC, they both are our contacts there. They are the ones who work these forward. They see that we're failing here, and we got 2% of the awards last time. 2%. 4 to 5 towns got nothing. These are the type of things we brought into the legislature with Michael Grant, a Democrat, myself a Republican, to try to find ways to do it better, and we will.
Thank you, Mr. Day. We want to head back out now to hear from the local voters, and we're going to hear a question from Alan about the shops at Nanuet.
My name is Alan. I'm from Nanuet, and I just want to know the impact of the shops that Nanuet has on taxpayers, if it's a benefit or does it hurt the taxpayers as far as having the new shops here in town.
Okay, David Freed, you're going to have a minute to respond about the shops at Nanuet, good or bad for taxpayers in Rockland County.
Alan's question is a great one, and people should understand that when you bring in a facility like the shops at Nanuet, that facility is likely to bring in, I believe it's estimated at $15 million in new sales tax. What we have to do, though, is make sure that we are diversifying retail. Retail is a huge part of Rockland County's economy. We have to make sure that the $15 million is, in fact, new revenue and not shifting from someplace else. That's a critical component of this. But the importance, and what I appreciate about Alan's question, is that he's asking us, how does it affect an individual person? And the reality is that the more money that we can bring in through economic development and business, sales tax revenue, shopping, tourism, et cetera, those are dollars that we don't have to go to Alan and ask him for and his family for. So it's very important to bring those ratables into Rockland.
Thank you, Mr. Freed. Mr. Day, your take on the shops at Nanuet and taxes in Rockland.
Thank you. Alan, that was a great question, because I remind people that some years back, the Palisades Center was built, and that was going to relieve all our taxes. We're going to make so much money that we're not going to have to worry about anything anymore again. Obviously, it did not happen, and I'll tell you why. All too often, folks in government look at things in a very narrow way. Are the shops in Nanuet going to be a boon? Absolutely. It's going to be I believe it would be a net positive, because it's a developed area. We'll get shoppers. I think that's a positive. However, you have to look at the cost and expenses inherent in any large development. Law enforcement, for example, the Palisades Center, there was a deal extracted where uniformed officers work in the Palisades Center. It never dealt with the fact that there were arrests in there, court time. The Clarkstown taxpayers spend a lot of money on law enforcement investigative time in order to deal with the issues that are part of the Palisades Center. That's something you have to look at, and even negotiate and insist upon with the owners of the parcel. How do you market it? This is where an enhanced tourism component is important. This is why I do not believe it should be in government. It should be under the RBA, Hospitality and Tourism Alliance. That's how you do it. The devil's in his details, and you can't take promises. You have to get out there and find out exactly what the details are so you can get the most out of it.
Thank you, Mr. Day. We're going to head back out to hear from the voters this